I went out and bought 4 new coffee systems to compete today against my Nespresso as the ultimate off-road trail coffee system. Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Casey, and today we're going to be testing out 4 different coffee systems and seeing if they can compete with my Nespresso automated coffee machine. Just to recap what we're using currently, this is a Nespresso machine. You pop this open, throw a pod in here, close it, hit the button, and out comes a cup of coffee or espresso. With this little machine, it's super compact, but we do have to plug it in. So you need a portable power supply or a large enough inverter to be able to handle 1000 watts of power. A big part of making coffee for me is how quickly and easily I can set up the system, make my cup of coffee, and tear it down and put it away again. So what I'm trying to do is get a coffee that tastes as close to what I make with my big espresso machine in my kitchen. And at the end, I'm gonna decide what I'm gonna be packing in my gear set for going out off-roading, overlanding, and on ventures and making coffee. Next to the espresso machine, we have the Mocha Pot, which is also an espresso maker. So this is a fairly simple device. However, it will require some sort of heating source in order to use. If you've never seen one of these before, the bottom unscrews. In here, we have a filter that we're gonna put our coffee in. You fill this with water. You fill this up with your coffee grinds, put this in here, screw this on top, and your espresso will actually bubble over here. Now, the thing with espresso is if you want a proper cup of coffee, you will have to make an Americano. So next to the Mocha Pot, we have a Stanley pour-over system. This comes as a set. It's very basic. Usually with a pour-over system, you have to have some sort of paper filter that you put your grinds in, and then you pour the water over top of. But with this, the filter is a metal filter included and screws into the bottoms. We put our grinds into the pour-over area, and then we're just gonna pour hot water, boiling water, over top. It's going to drip out the bottom into whatever cup or mug you have. So next up, we have a Coleman Camping Perculator coffee system. Once again, we will need a heat source to heat up the system, so you cannot just add boiling water to this. You need to put this on a stove to make your coffee. And inside is the percolator system, and you put your coffee grounds in the suspended bin, and we will need a heat source to heat up the system, so you cannot just add boiling water to this. You need to put this on a stove to make your coffee. And the last one that we have here is a traditional French press, but in a stainless steel double-walled container. Not familiar with a French press? You put your grinds into the pot. You have a filtered press system, so you can let your grinds steep. And then you can put the lid on and you have the handle extend out the top. And when you're ready to filter your grinds out of your coffee, you just press down on the handle. And the other thing you see that's hanging out up top here, well, this is not a coffee machine. This is in fact an electric kettle. I want to be able to make coffee without taking out my stove every time. Now, before we get on to actually trying these different systems out and testing the coffee, what about price? Let's talk about the cost of each of these. And I will put some links down in the description if you want to go check them out for yourself and maybe make a purchase depending on how this video goes. So the Nespresso is the most expensive option here. These generally run around $150 or so, but quite often they will go on sale and you can pick up a promo and get them for cheaper. But the other big expense is you will need some sort of power supplies. If you don't have a portable power unit, a Jackery 1000 is gonna run you around 1,000 to 1,200 bucks Canadian. And sometimes you may have an inverter in your vehicle that can run 1,000 watts, but not very often. So do keep in mind you would need a power supply to run this or some sort of power source. The Mocha Pot is fairly inexpensive. This is only about 30 bucks Canadian. And so it's not a really expensive option if you want to pick one of these up. And I'm gonna guess most of you are already bringing a camping stove with you. So as long as you don't mind getting that out, there you go. The Stanley system, I wish you could purchase this on its own because I think that would cut the cost down. This unit with the cup and the pour over is about $50. And so if this was on its own, we wouldn't need the mug, and we could maybe just buy one of these for 20 or 30 bucks. Now, I didn't do a super deep dive, but this is what was available on Amazon. Maybe this does come available on its own somewhere, but I didn't see it. If you find it, maybe that's worth it for you, but this system's about $50. The Coleman Camping Perculator is also about 30 bucks, so another not very expensive option, but the build quality of this isn't very great. This is loose. And the double-walled stainless steel French press system is one of the more expensive units. This was about 80 bucks Canadian, but this is a really nice system. The double wall will help retain the heat while you're waiting for your coffee to brew. And as far as an electric kettle goes, these are super cheap. This was only $20. I'm gonna try to do this as close to by the book as we can with ratios of coffee to water. So today I've got my scale here because I do want to evaluate taste, but as well I want to know approximately how much I should be using if I take any of these out on the trail. So I'll let you know the ratios of coffee to water that we use as we go. And my camping stove is the Jetboil Genesis. So I've brought that out as well, but you can use it to boil water, whether you bring a kettle or if you have the Jetboil pot, which boils water really quick. But I'm just gonna be plugging in the kettle and the other units to my wall AC because I already know they run on the Jackery. And as far as coffee goes, I have some freshly ground coffee with me. So if you want the best coffee, you want fresh, not too fresh, but freshly roasted coffee at about around a week or so. And you wanna bring a grinder with you to grind it if you want the freshest possible, but I'm gonna go with pre-grinding my own beans before I go because I don't wanna be wasting time grinding beans in the morning. I'm just using a dark roast bean that you can use for dark roast coffee or espresso. We're gonna compare all of these coffee systems, and the way I'm gonna rank them is both based on taste as well as convenience and ease of use. So I'll give you guys a ranking of 1 to 5 on how I like these systems. If we turn this on, we let it heat up. We pop this open, we take one of our pods, fire it in there. This is the Pike's Place roast. Hit the button. And that's pretty much all there is to making a cup of coffee with an espresso. Let's give this a taste. No milk in any of the tests today. We're just going to drink them black to get the best exposure to the flavor. And so smelling it, it smells a bit weaker, a little bit acidic. And then tasting it, it's a more of a weaker coffee taste. Not a lot of flavor depth, a little bit acidic. It's comparable to something I would get in a diner or somewhere where they have unlimited refills, but it's super quick and easy to make. If you don't really care too much about your coffee and you just want ultimate convenience and you've got access to higher wattage AC inverter or power supply, Nespresso is a pretty good option for a quick cup of coffee. Now, you don't have to buy Starbucks. You can buy a whole range of different pods. So the Nespresso machine is definitely going to rank high on the ease of use, but it's definitely low when it comes to coffee flavor and quality. All right, next up, let's try the Mocha Pot espresso machine. Hopefully this fits on here. Look at that. Just barely. What we're going to do is unscrew the bottom now. We will remove the little basket. So we filled it to the bottom of this little valve in here, nice and easy. So it says to fill this to the top of the basket without compressing it. So we're just gonna top this off. Quite a bit of coffee going in there. And we're gonna drop this in. We're gonna screw this back on. So it says to do this on low to medium heat. So the really nice thing about the Jetboil Genesis is you have really fine adjustments. And we will carefully position this on here and we will let that boil. And I am gonna leave the lid open until you can start to see the espresso pour out the top in a dark honey caramel color coming out there. And that's when we remove it from the heat. Okay, we've started to see the espresso coming out the top. I think that means it's time to remove it from the heat. It's still continuing to percolate. We're gonna just close that up and turn off our Jetboil. And in the meantime, I'm going to boil some water because, well, we'll try the espresso shot, but I want to make an Americano, so we're going to need some hot water to go with that. And, if you're wondering just how long that took, it was about 5 minutes or so. That amount of time will vary depending on how much wind you have, where your stove's located. I'm in my garage, so there's no wind, sort of ideal conditions. So maybe expect around 5 or 6 minutes to make that shot of espresso, and that's going to be for each one. So if you've got more than one person and you want to have multiple shots, multiple Americanos, it's going to take a little while. And a quick little segue, water is an important part of making any coffee. And so I use the Lifesaver jerry can, which has a purifying filter in it. You pressurize it, and then you have a nice little water spout. And we're going to be using purified water out of the Lifesaver jerry can. Ooh. It's got a kind of a golden, dark brown sugar look to it. That's definitely about a shot of espresso. I can smell some of the caramel flavor that I would normally get out of this espresso. Woo! That is strong. Definitely tastes like espresso. A little bit acidic, but that's generally what I get from this espresso bean. Really, really strong flavor. So if you want just a quick shot and get going, make one of those, fire it back, you're good to go. We don't want to lose too much of that coffee flavor. So just a half cup of water, we'll see how that is. Not too watery. Definitely a strong, bit more of a bitter coffee. It is a dark roast, so what I would expect. Definitely nowhere near as acidic as the Nespresso machine. That's really smooth, actually. I really like that. I don't feel like I'm getting quite the same flavor extracts that I get out of my big espresso machine, but I would still call that a good cup of coffee. There's a lot of setup, having to get my stove out, then have to wait 5-6 minutes, maybe more, to have that espresso pull. A bit of equipment setup, but fairly compact, and you don't have to bring the kettle. So if you're getting your stove out, you could use the jet boil pot and boil some water really quickly. Really good flavor. Setup time and cleanup time is high. Next up, let's try the pour over system from Stanley. I'm gonna use my ceramic mug so that having a metal lip and metal interior doesn't influence the taste at all. So we're just gonna use the pour over system on my white mug. If you wanna do this in the less scientific way, their instructions say to boil 20 ounces of water and then fire 3 tablespoons of coffee grounds in here. We're gonna do this a little bit more scientific so that we can get it bang on, but obviously out in the trail, you're not gonna bring your scale unless you're really particular about your coffee. Today, we're gonna put 21 grams of coffee, and then we're gonna add 350 grams of water. Now first, we're gonna bloom this. So we're just gonna pour a little bit of water on the coffee, and it's gonna bloom up. You can see it start to bubble a little bit. And when it's done blooming, then we are gonna add the remainder of the water and give it 2 or 3 minutes. Bring this up to 350 grams. There we go. And it's just going to slowly let that poured over water drip through the coffee and down into your cup. It's been about 3 minutes. Looks like our coffee has completely drained out of the bottom here, but we have, for the most part, a full cup of coffee. I need something to get rid of this, so hang on. And there we go. A nice full cup of dark, rich looking coffee. Let's check this out. Smell it first. Really nice, rich coffee smell. Not anything acidic coming off there. Let's give this a try. So not too watery. Some really nice, strong flavor. If you like a nice, bold flavor to your coffee, this is really nice. Now, sometimes I drink my coffee with milk or without milk. I could definitely drink this without milk. This is, it's got a nice flavor. It's really close to what I would make for an Americano, but it feels a little bit more mellow and not really any acidic aftertaste at all to that. That's a really good cup of coffee. As far as setup goes and using the pour over system, really easy. If you have an electric kettle that you can use, you don't need to bring out your stove at all. And I would say that it's fairly easy to eyeball the amount of coffee grinds and water that you're gonna put in there. So you don't need to actually bring a scale. Cleanup is as simple as rinsing out that pour over cup that has all the grinds in it. Bringing that pour over cup really doesn't take much space up in your rig. The downside to this though is you still have to wait 2 or 3 minutes for your pour over to finish, and you can't start the pour over until you've boiled your water. So you've got another 2 or 3 minutes you've got to wait for your water to boil, and you're only making 1 cup at a time. So if you've got multiple people you want to be making coffee for, it's going to be 2 or 3 minutes per person per cup, assuming you have a big pot of boiling water. Let's try the Coleman Blue Steel. Let's try the Coleman Perculator system now. This seems to be a very common coffee making system, but this is going to require the stove. Okay, so generally the rule of thumb, 1 tablespoon of coffee grounds per 1 cup of water. So this is about a tablespoon, so we'll put a couple in here, 1, maybe 3, and then we will put the lid on. Now we're gonna add 3 cups of water, or about 750 grams. We're gonna drop our percolator filter thing in. And then once we get this dialed into the right temperature, we're gonna let this sit and perk for about 10 minutes. And then we will try the coffee out. The water is percolating up. It's probably a little too hot. You want this every 2 or 3 seconds to percolate. So you can see how it shoots up through the middle spout, and then it's gonna drain back down. You want a perfect temperature here because now you've got brewed coffee in the carafe and you don't want to burn it. So you want it just the right temperature so you have a couple seconds between gurgles. Still a little too warm. Bring that down a little bit. It's been about 10 minutes, so let's turn the heat off and pull this off of here. And let's pour a cup of percolated, still can't hold it, of percolated coffee. So the percolated coffee looked very light when pouring it out of the carafe. It doesn't smell burnt, which I think is one of the possible ways to mess up your percolated coffee, because as the coffee brews, it's sitting in the carafe that's then sitting right on top of your heat source. Smells a little bit different than the other coffees for sure. More of a mellow smell. Not burnt, not acidic, just a softer, mellow smell of coffee. It's really, really hot. So let's see if we can try this. I can barely hold the mug. See it steaming up my glasses here. I'm just gonna give this a minute to cool off. So I cooled this off. Now I think it will be drinkable. It's still steaming hot, but it's not gonna burn my mouth. So definitely more of a bitter flavor, a bit more watery. Maybe we need to put more grinds in there, but it's a little bit watery. Maybe we can percolate it for a little bit longer, but I mean, we're already waiting 10 minutes for the percolation process to get our coffee. Definitely a softer, more mellow tasting coffee. Not acidic, but a little more watery and not as much flavor in here. I would say this isn't as good as the Nespresso. Even though Nespresso has more of an acidic taste, there's more of a coffee flavor to it. So the nice thing about the percolator system is you can brew a large volume of coffee all at once, but you are waiting around about 10 minutes. Setup, fairly straightforward, but you do need to get your stove out. But if you are getting your stove out or already have your stove out, you can make a big pot of coffee, but I wouldn't say this is the best tasting coffee I've had. Last but not least, the French press. And so we've got a double-walled stainless steel French press carafe and plunger, but I have used this and I do know it works awesome. So I will show you guys how this works and then we'll taste the coffee and compare it to what we've made so far. We are going to need a boiled water system. We're going to use the electric kettle because if I use this is what I'm going to use rather than pulling out the stove every time. But we're just boiling some water and we will do our measurements of coffee to water ratios here. we are going to use our scale here just for this test. And we are going to add 30 grams of coffee. And so you can get an idea of just how much 30 grams of coffee is, but it was maybe around 3 big spoonfuls. And we're gonna add 350 grams of hot water from our kettle, but just like the pour over, we're going to put a little bit of water in here first and let our coffee bloom. And when it absorbs the water, it kind of puffs up with the air and the water together, and then we're gonna pour the rest of our water on top. Now that we've got our coffee in there, we're gonna let this sit for about 4 minutes before putting the plunger and filter on. This only made about maybe 1/3 of the carafe. We're at about 4 minutes. Put the lid on so that it stays warm the whole time, but we're just gonna plunge this down real slow. What that's gonna do is it's gonna scrape all the coffee off the edges and then compress it at the bottom so we get a nice clean cup of coffee without grinds in it. Nice dark rich color, much richer than the percolator. And we don't want to empty this all the way to the bottom because you might get a few grinds, so we will be careful. Smells really nice. Nice chocolatey golden brown. Okay, let's try out the French press coffee. It might not be easy to see, but it sticks to the edges. There's a nice thickness to this coffee. Hopefully it's not too muddy. Smells really nice. Doesn't smell acidic or watery. I think this is gonna be a punchy coffee. Ooh, I'm not sure about that. I think maybe the dark roast beans with the French press produces a really, really strong coffee. That's really strong. A bit acidic. It's got a bit of the espresso acidic flavor in it with the dark roast. I think this might be better with a bit more water to coffee ratio. It might be a little bit heavy with that 30 grams to 350 grams. I'm gonna smooth it out a little bit. Add just a little bit of water. Well, that's better. It was just a little bit too heavy. So I think the water to beans ratio needs to be a little bit more water there. That's nice. That's a strong cup of coffee. This is really good. All right, so pros and cons of the French press. Well, this is quite expensive. This was $80 Canadian for the stainless steel double walled French press, but this is a really nice one. You don't want to get a glass one because I think you would just break that carrying it around off-roading. It's gonna make about 3 cups or so of coffee for people, average size cups based on what we just tested there. It was about 1/3 full. Fairly easy to set up and clean, but you do need something to boil your water. Whether you pull out your stove or you have an electric kettle. Cleaning it, we just take out the plunger and rinse out the crud in the bottom. Well, let's rank the different coffee systems based on both flavor and ease of use. So I have lined them up as far as what I think the best flavor goes from best to worst. So we've got the Mocha system, the espresso machine on the left, which makes excellent coffee. We've got the pour over, which still makes really good coffee as well. And we've got the French press, which I think is fairly close to the pour over system. The Nespresso, which makes okay coffee, but it's nothing to write home about. And then what I think is trash tier, the Perculator. So which coffee system am I going to use based on the quality of these? Well, I think it's going to be a toss-up between the pour over and the French press. Since I now own them all, I'm just going to take out which one I think I need for the trip, depending on how many people are going. Honestly, the Mocha espresso system, as good as the coffee is, quite a bit better than any of the other ones here. Just having to get my stove out, the quantity that it makes, for me, that's just too much trouble for trail coffee. I really do like the pour over system. I think it's nice and simple, it's compact. I can grab my electric kettle, I can make a quick cup of coffee. So if it's just me or one other person going out, I'm gonna bring the pour over system, I think, from now on, without the additional mug that comes with it. I'm just gonna bring the filter system, because this is great. But I think if I'm traveling with a larger group and I wanna make some excellent coffee for more people at once, then I will swap that out and bring the stainless steel French press. That also makes a really good cup of coffee. I can use the kettle with it, so set up and tear down, fairly simple. For now, we're gonna retire the espresso or Nespresso machine. I really just hated buying those pods all the time, and the coffee's okay, but it can be quite acidic, and I'm always having to try to find pods, where now with these other two systems, I can use fresh coffee. And the percolator, well, I'm gonna just throw that in the garbage because I think the coffee's terrible. I don't like the system, and I gotta get my stove out, the setup, everything is just not for me. I know you guys are gonna ask about the jet boil coffee system. I don't have one, they're quite expensive. I still have to hook it up to some sort of gas source, and it only makes, you know, one large cup at a time. So I didn't include it in here, but I know it is popular and it's super compact. Honorable mentions, because I hear it does make really good coffee, but these are some regular coffee systems that you can use in your house as well as take with you on the trail. So let me know what you guys think, what you're using for coffee. If you have any other recommendations, leave them down in the comments below. I am trying to hit 40,000 subscribers. We're really close, so I really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, and I do upload new videos every week. Like this one if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.